Dead Space is highly recognised for reinventing the psychological horror genre that has been struggling on this generation of consoles. It was invented being set in space and was a lonely journey at that with barely any equipment to survive. When Dead Space 3 was shown at E3 last year to be including co-op, people's warning signs went straight up. What were they doing to this great survival horror, we asked. Then we were shown cover systems and fighting human soldiers. Fan outcry was quite huge. Dead Space 3 then disappeared from the limelight while they made adjustments and showed fans what they wanted to see from Dead Space, from weaponry creation to co-op including interesting psychological gameplay. But were these changes enough, or have EA tainted another great gaming genre?
It all started 300 years ago with the discovery of the Black Marker, an alien artifact found under the old Gulf of Mexico on Earth. It seemed to hold the promise of limitless energy until it produced dementia, insanity, and a twisted life after death known as necromorphs.
Isaac Clarke is a wreck of a man after the necromorph outbreak on the Isamura and Titan Station. He has become a recluse, hiding away from the world. But the crazy religion Unitology is hunting Isaac down since he has the knowledge to destroy the markers which the cult worships and causes necromorph outbreaks. In previous games, these religious nuts have been nothing but creepy, misguided people, but for some unknown reason have toppled the government. It's a strange situation since the Earth Gov are the ones who rescue, even though they've been the ones trying to control the markers for an energy source. I would have been more interested to have seen the rise of Unitology instead of being told to the player that it just happened. Isaac is taken to the planet Tal Vatis, which is meant to be the origins of the marker and a planet that actually managed to stop an outbreak from happening. It's the truth behind the planet what generally pushes you to the end of the game. However, it's let down by really obvious story tropes and poor script writing for characters and an unnecessary love story that has no part in these games. It really lets the payoff down. The game is split into two chapters. The first half of the game which I'm really surprised it didn't do more with, is you exploring the remains of a space graveyard above the planet while you try to find the survivors and get a functioning ship together so you can land on the planet. Here is when the game most feels like Dead Space, with you exploring these infested ships with little equipment and monster closets around every corner. The iconic spacewalking sections also return with the amount of ships you'll be exploring in this graveyard. Once you manage to acquire a ship to land on the surface, you've then got to find out what happened on the planet, which will help you stop the marker outbreak. The planet is a giant ice ball with human research facilities scattered around, and you'll be trekking your way across it, which is initially fun and something new for the game, till you realise that this Dead Space doesn't have much space in it. To compensate for this, the game introduces ice climbing, which controls awfully, and the amount of instant deaths attached to it is not even funny. The weaponry in Dead Space has also been an iconic part of the game series, with Isaac being an engineer who would use tools of his trade as weapons, particularly his trusty plasma cutter. Here the game makes the biggest change by scrapping the idea of one type of weapon but hundreds of variations of guns by having a crafting system. You can still make those iconic weapons from the first two games if you're a purist though. You start with a frame which decides if it's a one or two-handed weapon, then you choose a primary and secondary fire weapon and then any mods you wish to attach to it. It's a fun system which lets you experiment in the normal difficulties or co-op. You can find these different parts throughout the story and can gather them with scavenger bots you deploy. This will get you through the game no problem and you'll be able to create most weapons in the game. EA however decided to include a microtransaction system in the game which enables you to buy random, generally loot chests. So if you want to make this a survival game less survival, then you've got that option there. You do find in-game resources which let you buy the loot chests as well, but still, what's the point? The game also uses a universal ammo system, so the game becomes less survival horror again, since you're not desperately searching for ammo for specific guns and not having to use backup weapons you've got stored away. There is of course unlockable difficulties which can revert the game to being like the original Dead Space, where you have to create your own ammo and health packs, and there's a hardcore mode which gives you one life to beat the game, which is quite a task since it's a 15 to 20 hour game and a simple instant death could ruin a run. The game also has removed hard save locations for an autosave system of your last checkpoint and inventory and equipment. This enables the player to jump between previous chapters and other players' games with the equipment you've acquired. With this type of save system, this allows achievement junkies to go back as well whenever they like, unlike in previous Dead Space games. There's even a handy checklist of what's in each chapter for you to complete the game 100%. The co-op mode also has some of its own unique side missions where two players see two different things happening at the same time. One of you could be seeing hallucinations while the other player sees that player going crazy. It's quite clever and offers the darkest elements of the game.
Ellie, Carver, to reach the Admiral's quarters. Isaac's...
Turn it off.
Hey, Isaac!
Turn
Isaac?
it off.
Carver, what's going on?
Turn it off.
Isaac!
Turn
Hey!
it off. Turn it off.
Hey!
What is it? What's going on?
Nothing. Everything's fine. Everything's fine.
The shooting at the beginning of the game is the most reminiscent part of the previous Dead Spaces. The first chapter is slower and tamer while you explore the spaceships with your initial weapons in the game like the plasma cutter and the pulse rifle. The necromorphs are still particularly weak versus limb dismemberment, in other words cutting legs and arms off, so those weapons are great for precision killing at the start. This was the most fun I had with the gameplay till you arrive on the planet. Then the game changes and not for the best. The enemies on the planet you encounter have all been given adrenaline and close the gaps between you and them very quickly. This change seems to have been made because of the way co-op works, which is understandable, but when in solo or on harder difficulties it becomes a nuisance. Here you have to change your weaponry around to compensate, and these weapons aren't fun to use like the plasma cutter, which I use till the end of the game because I'm the Dead Space purist. The game has a few new skins for the necromorphs, and the only new enemies in the game are unitologists. With unitology having what seems like a private army, they chase you to the planet to stop you from finding a way to stop the marker. You have kamikaze grenade wielding cultists, gun toting crazies, and rocket launcher soldiers. They all die easily but hamper the gameplay. To compensate for the ranged weapons they'll be using, there is now a cover system, but most of the time it's not wise to seek it since the game is still throwing these fast moving necromorphs into the mix. One section I died in a lot was when 3 rocket launcher cultists were sniping me and I had 5 to 6 hardened necromorphs spawning next to me. I want to quickly mention a pet peeve I had as well: ice climbing. This was to compensate for being no zero gravity sections in the game's second half. The controls are clunky and having to manually jump over small gaps instead of being an auto jump was annoying, since if you don't jump you take a lot of damage and automatically make it to the other side of the gap. These gaps can suddenly appear without warning and blend into the wall because of the perspective of the player. Laughably though, the end boss is the easiest part of this whole game, but Dead Space has never done bosses well, so oh hum.
Isaac Clarke, just the man I was looking for. Oh, don't waste your energy, you're going to be dead in a matter of minutes. Pick him up.
What do you want from me?
As part of the marker test program, Isaac, you helped make them. And today, you of all people get to watch me set them free.
No. No. You'll kill everyone.
Death is only the beginning, Isaac.
The game gets one thing right, is the look and feel of the Dead Space universe. From the space graveyards to the snow-covered planet, it's quite breathtaking to behold. The music for the game sets the mood perfectly, and the necromorphs are as horrific as ever to behold. They have a very different feel because of the storyline, but for veteran Dead Space players, there's nothing new to surprise you, like when you encounter the babies from the original Dead Space. Voice work is good, supported by a lot of veteran voice actors, including my personal favourite Simon Templeman, who voiced Kane from the Blood Omen series. Nice to see that he's still doing some work, especially good news that a new Blood Omen game has been announced as well. But I digress. Voice work's great, but let down by poor script writing. The atmosphere that was in previous games is still here, but it's been toned down a lot to compensate for this being a more fast-paced game. Every door and button you press generally turns the area into a monster arena. It's rare to have a moment of silence, except for the horrific loading screens hidden behind 5 to 60 second door animations.
Damn it, you have to stop!
Isaac, is that you? You are unbelievably hard to kill. Are you aware of that?
Dead Space 3 is a great game, but also flawed in many ways that let it down as a horror game. With less focus on survival, the game becomes more of a generic shooter, especially in the latter half of the game. I want to say I enjoyed it, but looking back, I can't say I did. Initially, the gameplay was fun until you arrive at the ice planet, when the game just goes cold, boring, and generic. Most veteran Dead Space players will have already purchased this game, but for anyone else, I would say give it a miss for now and wait for it to be on sale.